Hashtag Galactic crowds mocked every human fighter. Part 1. The Nexus Arena stretched across 3 kilometers of gleaming metal and energy shields, its curved walls rising into the artificial atmosphere of Station Omega-7. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the tiered seating, their various forms creating a tapestry of scales, fur, chitin, and synthetic materials. The air hummed with excitement and the constant chatter of universal translators converting hundreds of languages into comprehensible speech. Marcus Chun pressed his face against the observation window of the competitor's preparation chamber, watching the crowd below with a mixture of awe and dread. 3 months ago, he had been a construction worker on Mars, operating heavy machinery and living paycheck to paycheck. Now he stood in the most prestigious fighting tournament in known space, representing not just Earth, but all of humanity. First time seeing the big show, human? The voice came from behind him, accompanied by the heavy footfalls of someone approaching. Marcus turned to see a Kronar warrior, easily 3 meters tall and covered in natural armor plating that looked like it could deflect plasma bolts. The alien's 4 eyes studied Marcus with what might have been amusement, though reading Kronar expressions was still beyond most humans. Yeah, Marcus replied, trying to keep his voice steady. It's bigger than the videos made it look. The Kronar's mandibles clicked in what Marcus had learned was their equivalent of laughter. Videos never capture the smell of fear, do they? Or the way the crowd's bloodlust makes the air itself feel heavy. Marcus nodded, though he wasn't sure if the heaviness in the air was crowd psychology or just the station's artificial gravity being slightly higher than Earth standard. Everything here was designed to accommodate species far larger and stronger than humans. I am Vextar of the 3rd Molten Ring. The Kronar continued, extending one of his 4 arms in what Marcus recognized as a formal greeting gesture. I have fought in 17 tournaments across 9 systems. You're the human Marcus Chun, yes? The one they call Earth's champion. That's me, Marcus said, accepting the greeting though his hand was completely dwarfed by Vextar's armored appendage. Though I'm not sure about the champion part. I just won the qualifying fights. Vextar's laugh was like rocks grinding together. Modest. I appreciate that in prey. The casual use of the word prey sent a chill down Marcus's spine, but he forced himself to maintain eye contact with the alien warrior. In the 3 months since humanity had been granted entry into the galactic fighting circuit, every human participant had been eliminated in the first round. The galactic community had begun to view humans as a curiosity at best, a joke at worst. Tell me, human, Vextar said, settling onto a bench that groaned under his weight. What makes your species think you belong in the combat rings? You have no natural armor, no venomous fangs, no energy projection capabilities. Your bone density is laughably low compared to most combat species. Yet here you are. It was a question Marcus had been asking himself since the day he'd volunteered for the selection trials. Earth's government had been desperate to prove humanity belonged among the galactic community's elite. The combat rings weren't just entertainment. They were a measure of species worth, a way for civilizations to prove their strength and earn respect among the stars. We adapt, Marcus said finally. Humans are good at figuring out solutions when everything seems impossible. Adaptation, Vextar mused. Yes, I have heard this about your kind. You survive in environments that would kill most species. But survival and combat excellence are different things, human. In the ring, adaptation means nothing if you cannot strike hard enough to damage your opponent or move fast enough to avoid their attacks. The preparation chamber's door hissed open, and a floating drone entered. Its mechanical voice filled the room with announcement. Competitor briefing in 30 minutes. All registered fighters report to Briefing Chamber Alpha 7. Marcus gathered his gear, regulation combat suit, basic protective padding, and the neural interface that would connect him to the arena systems. The suit felt thin and inadequate compared to the natural armor of species like the Kronar, but it was the best human technology could provide. As they walked through the corridors toward the briefing chamber, Vextar continued his casual interrogation. I watched recordings of your previous human fighters. They showed technical skill, yes, but no killer instinct. They fought like they were sparring rather than trying to destroy their opponents. Is this a cultural limitation of your species? Marcus considered the question. He had watched those same recordings, studying every mistake, every moment of hesitation that had led to humanity's repeated defeats. The other human fighters had been excellent athletes, trained by the best combat instructors Earth could provide. But Vextar was right. They had fought with restraint, even in a tournament where such restraint often meant elimination. Maybe, Marcus admitted. Most of our combat sports have rules designed to prevent serious injury. We're not used to fighting with the intent to. He paused, searching for the right words. To cripple or kill. Vextar supplied helpfully. Yes, this is what I suspected. Your species has become soft through civilization. You have forgotten the primal joy of dominance through violence. The briefing chamber was a vast amphitheater with holographic displays showing detailed information about each competitor. Marcus found his designated seat and immediately felt the weight of hundreds of eyes upon him. Conversations in dozens of languages quieted as beings noticed the human among them. A few rows ahead, he could see a group of Zealoth fighters, their crystalline bodies refracting light in beautiful but intimidating patterns. Their species could generate and manipulate electromagnetic fields, making them formidable opponents who could disable most technological equipment while shocking their enemies unconscious. To his left sat a cluster of void dancers, ethereal beings who could partially phase out of normal space-time, making them nearly impossible to hit with conventional attacks. Their victories in previous tournaments had been described as more like art than combat. Attention, competitors. A voice boomed through the chamber's sound system. The speaker was Director Calovan, a member of the Hegemony Council that oversaw the combat rings. Her species, the Architects, were tall and slender with metallic skin that seemed to shift color based on their emotional state. Currently, Calovan's skin showed the deep purple that indicated formal authority. Welcome to the 847th Grand Tournament of the Galactic Combat Rings. Over the next 7 standard days, you will compete in single elimination combat to determine the strongest fighter in this sector of the galaxy. The victor will receive not only the title of Sector Champion, but also the honor of representing this sector in the Grand Convergence Tournament. Holographic displays around the chamber showed the tournament bracket. Marcus found his name in the lower section, scheduled to fight in the second bout of the first day. His opponent was listed as Thekmar, a bruiser from the asteroid colonies. Combat regulations are as follows, Calovan continued. Each bout will take place in a standard ring environment with variable gravity and atmospheric conditions. Fighters may use any natural abilities of their species, but no external weapons or technological enhancements beyond basic life support are permitted. Victory is achieved by opponent submission, incapacitation, or death. The casual mention of death as a victory condition sent murmurs through the assembled fighters. Marcus noticed that most species seemed to take this in stride, while he felt his stomach tighten with anxiety. Environmental conditions for each bout will be randomly selected from the approved list, Calovan explained as new displays showed various arena configurations. Possible conditions include standard gravity with normal atmosphere, heavy gravity with methane atmosphere, zero gravity with oxygen-helium mix, high radiation environment with protective energy fields, and liquid environment with breathing apparatus. Marcus studied each environment type, trying to calculate how humans might perform in each. Standard gravity would be ideal, but the chances of getting that for every fight were minimal. Heavy gravity would be particularly challenging. Most human bones would struggle under twice Earth normal weight, while species like the Kronar had evolved in such conditions. Bracket assignments are final, Calovan announced. First round begins tomorrow at 0800 station time. Competitors should report to their assigned preparation chambers 1 hour before their scheduled bout. As the briefing concluded and fighters began filing out, Marcus found himself surrounded by a group of aliens he didn't recognize. They were humanoid in general shape, but covered in what looked like living metal that flowed and shifted across their bodies. You are the human, one of them said, its voice carrying a slight electronic distortion. We are the Unity Collective. We wish to study you before your elimination. Study me. Your species is an anomaly, another Unity being explained. No natural weapons, minimal physical capabilities, yet you persist in entering competitions clearly beyond your limitations. We wish to understand this behavioral pattern. Marcus felt heat rising in his cheeks. Maybe you'll understand better after you watch me fight. The Unity beings exchanged glances, their metallic skin rippling with patterns of light. Confidence despite obvious disadvantages. Fascinating. We shall observe your performance with great interest. They departed, leaving Marcus alone in the now nearly empty briefing chamber. He made his way back to the competitor quarters, passing through corridors filled with beings whose casual conversations were about breaking bones and optimal killing techniques. His assigned quarters were small, but comfortable, with a bed designed for humanoid species and a nutrition dispenser programmed with foods compatible with human physiology. A wall screen showed tournament statistics, and Marcus couldn't help but pull up the data on human performance. The numbers were depressing. 12 human fighters had competed in various tournaments over the past 6 months since Earth's admission to the Galactic Combat Circuit. All 12 had been eliminated in the first round. Average fight duration, 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Most common cause of defeat, overwhelming physical disadvantage. Marcus closed the statistics and pulled up recordings of his upcoming opponent instead. Thekmar was a bruiser, a species known for incredible physical strength and nearly impenetrable hide. The recordings showed him literally tearing apart opponents with his bare hands, his massive frame moving with surprising speed despite its bulk. In Thekmar's most recent fight, he had faced a saber cat, a species of natural predators with retractable claws capable of cutting through most materials. The fight had lasted less than 2 minutes, ending when Thekmar had grabbed the saber cat mid-leap and slammed it into the arena floor with enough force to crack the reinforced surface. Marcus lay back on his bed, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, he would face a being capable of crushing him without apparent effort. The galactic audience would watch with mild interest, expecting another quick human defeat. His own species would be watching too, hoping desperately for their first victory in the rings. He thought about the months of training that had brought him here. Earth's best combat instructors had worked with him, teaching him every fighting technique humanity had developed. He had studied recordings of alien fighting styles, learned to recognize the physical tells that preceded attacks from dozens of different species. But lying here now, the weight of expectation and the reality of what he faced tomorrow pressed down on him like the gravity of a gas giant. How could any amount of human training prepare him to fight beings who were simply built for violence in ways humans never had been? His communicator chimed with an incoming message from Earth. It was from his sister Lisa, a video recording made in the small apartment they had shared before his selection for the tournament. "Hey Marcus," her recorded image said, smiling despite the worry in her eyes. "I just wanted you to know that everyone here is proud of you, no matter what happens. You've already done something amazing just by getting there. Don't forget that you're not just fighting for yourself. You're showing the galaxy that humans don't give up, even when the odds are impossible." She paused, and Marcus could see her struggling with emotion. "I know you're probably scared. I would be. But you've always been the toughest person I know, even when we were kids, and you were half the size of everyone else. You found ways to win when you shouldn't have been able to. Find a way tomorrow, too." The message ended, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and the quiet hum of the station's life support systems. Outside his small window, he could see other sections of Station Omega 7, filled with beings from across the galaxy who had come to watch the tournament. Many of them probably didn't even know humans existed until recently. Tomorrow, he would be their introduction to his species. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but his mind kept racing through possible strategies, potential weaknesses in Thekmar's fighting style, ways that human adaptability might find an edge where raw strength could not. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a plan began to form. Desperate, probably suicidal, but perhaps the only chance he had to prove that humanity belonged among the stars. #Galactic crowds mocked every human fighter. Part 2, the arena's preparation chamber buzzed with activity as maintenance drones performed final equipment checks. Marcus stood in the designated fighter staging area, watching through the reinforced transparent wall as the first bout of the tournament concluded. A void dancer had just defeated a saber cat in what the commentators were calling a masterpiece of dimensional combat technique. "Impressive display," commented the technician, calibrating Marcus's neural interface. The tech was a synthari, a cybernetic species whose organic components have been almost entirely replaced with advanced technology. The void dancer phased out of normal space-time, just as the saber cat's claws passed through where vital organs would have been, reappeared behind the target, and delivered a kinetic pulse that disrupted the nervous system. Marcus nodded, though he was more focused on studying the arena environment. The random selection had produced a standard gravity field with normal atmospheric composition, as close to Earth normal as he could hope for. The arena floor was a hexagonal grid of energy-dampened metal designed to absorb impacts that would otherwise shatter conventional materials. "Your opponent has arrived," the technician announced, gesturing toward the opposite staging area. Through the transparent barrier, Marcus could see Thekmar being prepared by his own tech team. The bruiser was even more imposing in person than he had appeared in the recordings. Standing nearly 4 meters tall, his body was a mass of dense muscle covered by thick, gray-green hide that looked like natural armor plating. His arms were disproportionately long, ending in hands that could probably encompass Marcus's entire torso. Biological scans indicate the bruiser's hide has a tensile strength comparable to composite armor, the Synthari technician reported, reading data from sensor feeds. Bone density approximately 4 times standard humanoid baseline. Muscle fiber composition suggests striking force equivalent to a light military vehicle. "Thanks for the encouraging assessment," Marcus muttered, checking his suit's systems one final time. The neural interface felt strange against the base of his skull, a slight tingling sensation that meant the arena's sensors could now monitor his vital signs and neural activity. "I am required to inform you of tactical options available through the arena's combat assistance system," the technician continued. "You may request environmental modifications within acceptable parameters, access to basic tactical analysis algorithms, or emergency medical intervention protocols." Marcus had studied these options extensively. Environmental modifications could include changes to gravity, atmospheric composition, or arena layout, but they had to be agreed upon by both fighters. Thekmar would never agree to anything that might disadvantage him. The tactical analysis system was primarily designed for species with different cognitive structures than humans. It would be more hindrance than help. "I'll pass on the assistance," Marcus said. "How about my own plan?" The technician's optical sensors focused on him with what might have been curiosity. Intriguing. Most competitors, particularly those with physical disadvantages, utilize every available enhancement. Most competitors aren't human. Fighter Chun, report to arena entrance in 60 seconds, announced the arena's central AI. Around the preparation chamber, holographic displays showed betting odds for the upcoming fight. Marcus tried not to look at them, but caught a glimpse of numbers that suggested most spectators expected the bout to last less than 3 minutes. As he walked toward the arena entrance, Marcus caught sight of the spectator galleries. The crowd was massive. Easily 50,000 beings from dozens of species, all come to watch the tournament. In one section, he could see a small group of humans, probably diplomats and officials from Earth delegation. They looked nervous. The entrance tunnel was a corridor of energy barriers that gradually transitioned from the staging area's artificial environment to the arena proper. As Marcus walked through it, he could hear the crowd's reaction to his appearance, a mixture of curiosity, amusement, and dismissive chatter in languages he couldn't identify. "Entering the arena now is Marcus Chun of Earth," the announcer's voice boomed across the venue. "Representing humanity in their 13th attempt to achieve victory in the galactic combat rings. Chun stands 1.8 meters tall, masses 82 kilograms, and utilizes the standard human fighting style of adaptive combat." There was a pause in the announcement, as if the commentator wasn't quite sure how to describe human combat techniques. Marcus understood the confusion. Human fighting styles had evolved for combat between humans, not beings who might have natural weapons, armor, or abilities that defied conventional physics. His opponent needs no introduction. The announcer continued as Thekmar emerged from the opposite tunnel. Thekmar of the asteroid colonies, veteran of 47 arena victories. Standing 3.9 meters tall with a mass of 847 kilograms, he brings the devastating power of bruiser physiology to today's combat. The crowd's roar for Thekmar was deafening. Chants in various languages echoed across the arena, most of them variations on the bruiser's name. A few scattered voices called out things like quick fight and easy prey in universal common, though Marcus tried to ignore them. The arena floor was roughly circular, about 60 meters in diameter. Energy barriers around the perimeter rose 30 meters high, designed to contain the most violent exchanges while giving spectators an unobstructed view. At various points around the floor, Marcus could see sensor arrays and medical intervention equipment ready to deploy if the fight went badly wrong. Fighters approached the center circle, commanded the referee, a tall, thin being from a species Marcus didn't recognize. Its voice carried an authoritative tone that seemed to resonate directly in his bones rather than through his ears. Marcus walked toward the center, hyper-aware of how small his footsteps sounded compared to Thekmar's heavy tread. Up close, the bruiser was even more intimidating. His eyes were small, but intelligent, studying Marcus with the focus of a predator evaluating prey. Standard tournament rules apply, the referee announced. Victory by submission, incapacitation, or death. External weapons prohibited. Natural species abilities permitted. Medical intervention available upon request or referee determination. Do you understand these conditions? Understood, Thekmar rumbled, his voice like an avalanche. Understood, Marcus replied, surprised at how steady his own voice sounded. Then let combat begin. The referee retreated to a safe distance as energy barriers snapped into place around the fighting area. The crowd's noise faded to a background roar as Marcus's attention focused entirely on his opponent. Thekmar didn't immediately attack. Instead, he circled slowly, studying Marcus's stance and movement patterns. The bruiser's approach was methodical, professional. He might possess overwhelming physical advantages, but he wasn't underestimating his opponent. You are smaller than the others of your kind who have fought here, Thekmar said, his voice easily carrying across the arena floor. Do humans vary greatly in size, or are you simply young? I'm average, Marcus replied, keeping his distance and watching for any sign of an attack. We're just not as big as most species. Curious, how does such a small, fragile species survive long enough to develop space travel? It was a question with genuine interest behind it, but Marcus suspected the conversation was also tactical, an attempt to gather information about human psychology and combat reactions. Same way prey animals survive, Marcus said, beginning his own slow circle around the arena floor. We're fast, we're smart, and we work together. But you stand alone now. Do I? Thekmar's expression shifted slightly, perhaps puzzled by the response. It was then that Marcus made his first move, not toward the bruiser, but toward one of the arena's structural support columns that rose from floor to ceiling. The column was purely decorative, designed to make the arena appear more like a natural fighting ground rather than a sterile technological environment. It was made of synthetic stone, roughly 3 meters in circumference, and carved with decorative patterns representing various galactic civilizations. Marcus reached the column and immediately began climbing. His hands and feet found purchase on the carved patterns as he ascended with the agility that came from years of construction work on Mars, where workers regularly had to navigate complex, three-dimensional environments. What are you doing? Thekmar called out, his confusion evident. This is combat, not a climbing exhibition. The crowd's murmur grew louder. Marcus could hear commentary in various languages, most of it expressing bafflement at his tactics. Climbing during a fight wasn't against the rules, but it was certainly unconventional. When Marcus reached a height of about 4 meters, he stopped and turned to face Thekmar. From this position, he could see the bruiser's entire body posture, watch for the telltale signs that preceded an attack. More importantly, he had negated Thekmar's primary advantage, the ability to use his massive size and strength in close combat. You cannot stay up there forever, Thekmar pointed out. And I can wait. Bruisers are known for patience. Can you? Marcus asked. Because I've been studying recordings of your fights. You're aggressive, direct. Patient isn't really your style. He was taking a calculated risk, trying to provoke the bruiser into making a mistake. Thekmar's previous victories had all followed a similar pattern. Overwhelming force applied quickly and efficiently. Extended tactical exchanges weren't his preference. I see, Thekmar said slowly. You hope to frustrate me into making an error. But what will you do when I simply wait for you to tire and fall? Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he began moving around the column, using handholds and footholds to reposition himself while maintaining his elevation. The movement served two purposes. It kept him from becoming a stationary target, and it allowed him to study the arena from a different perspective. What he saw gave him hope. The decorative columns weren't just ornamental. They were part of a larger architectural pattern that included hanging energy conduits, suspended platforms, and structural beams that created a three-dimensional environment extending well above the main arena floor. "I'm not planning to fall," Marcus called down to Thekmar. "I'm planning to fight smart." Without warning, he leaped from his current position to a nearby energy conduit. The conduit was designed to carry power to various arena systems, but it was also strong enough to support his weight. Using it like a bridge, he moved to another support structure, then to a suspended platform that gave him an even better view of the arena. Thekkener Skormar watched this aerial maneuvering with growing irritation. "This is cowardice. Face me on the ground like a warrior." "This is tactics," Marcus replied, now moving from platform to platform with increasing confidence. "Something humans learned a long time ago, when we had to fight things bigger and stronger than us." The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some spectators seemed intrigued by the unusual approach, while others were clearly frustrated by the lack of direct combat. Marcus could hear angry roars from what were probably Bruiser supporters who had expected a quick, decisive victory. From his elevated position, Marcus could see something that hadn't been visible from ground level: stress points in Thekmar's stance and movement. The Bruiser species had evolved for tremendous strength and durability, but their body structure had limitations. Their height and mass required significant energy to maintain, and their joints showed signs of strain when they made sudden movements. More importantly, Thekmar's frustration was beginning to show. The methodical patience he had displayed at the start of the fight was giving way to visible agitation. He had begun pacing in small circles, his hands clenching and unclenching as he tracked Marcus's movement overhead. "You cannot win a fight by running away," Thekmar shouted, his voice carrying more anger than before. "I'm not running," Marcus replied, positioning himself on a platform directly above the Bruiser. "I am hunting." That got Thekmar's attention. The Bruiser looked up just as Marcus dropped something. His water ration container emptied of its contents. The small metal cylinder bounced harmlessly off Thekmar's thick hide, but the message was clear. Marcus could hit him from above any time he chose. "Clever," Thekmar admitted, "but dropping small objects will not defeat me." "No," Marcus agreed, "but this will." He had been working his way toward a specific location in the arena's upper structure, a junction where multiple support beams met near one of the main power conduits. The junction included emergency release mechanisms designed to allow rapid reconfiguration of the arena layout for different types of events. Marcus had noticed these mechanisms during his study of arena technical specifications. They weren't weapons in any conventional sense, but they could be triggered to lower additional platforms or modify the arena's physical structure. Most fighters ignored them because most species preferred ground-based combat. But humans had learned to use their environment as a weapon long before they reached the stars. The release mechanism required precise manipulation of 3 separate controls within a short time window. Marcus's construction experience had given him the dexterity needed for such work, and his smaller size allowed him to reach controls designed for maintenance personnel rather than arena combatants. As he activated the sequence, Thekmar finally lost patience entirely. "Enough of this mockery," the Bruiser roared, charging toward the base of Marcus's current platform. His massive fist slammed into the support column with devastating force, causing the entire structure to shake. But Marcus was no longer there. He had already moved to the next platform in his sequence, triggering release mechanisms as he went. Around the arena, additional structures began extending from the walls, platforms, bridges, and barriers that created a complex three-dimensional maze where size and brute strength would be less decisive factors. The crowd's reaction grew louder as they realized what was happening. This wasn't just an unconventional fighting style. It was a complete transformation of the battle environment, turning a simple arena into something resembling the industrial complexes where humans had learned to survive and thrive. For the first time since the fight began, Marcus smiled. Let the galaxy see what humans could do when they stopped trying to fight like everyone else and started fighting like humans. Galactic crowds mocked every human fighter. Part 3, the transformed arena, now resembled a three-dimensional maze of platforms, bridges, and mechanical structures. What had been a simple circular fighting floor was now a complex environment that extended from ground level to nearly the ceiling of the arena chamber. Emergency lighting cast dramatic shadows between the metal frameworks, creating a landscape of hiding spots and tactical positions. Thekmar stood in the center of the original arena floor, slowly rotating as he tried to track Marcus's movement through the overhead structures. The bruiser's frustration was now openly visible. His massive hands kept clenching into fists, and his breathing had become noticeably heavier. "This is not honorable combat," Thekmar bellowed, his voice echoing off the new metal surfaces. "You hide like a scavenger instead of facing me with courage." Marcus paused on a narrow bridge connecting two platforms, looking down at his opponent. "Honor's a luxury when you're outweighed by 800 kilograms, he called back. "My species learned that a long time ago." The crowd's reaction had shifted dramatically. Where before there had been casual dismissal and expectations of quick defeat, now there was genuine interest. Conversations in dozens of languages filled the arena as spectators tried to understand what they were witnessing. This wasn't like any combat they had seen before. In the VIP viewing area, Marcus caught a glimpse of several important figures leaning forward in their seats. Director Calovan was among them, her architect skin now showing swirls of orange and blue, colors that indicated surprise and analytical focus. "The human demonstrates unexpected environmental manipulation skills," commented one of the arena's official analysts, his voice carrying over the crowd through amplified speakers. While physically inferior to his opponent, he has successfully negated many of the bruiser's natural advantages through tactical use of arena infrastructure. Thekmar didn't appreciate being analyzed like a specimen. With a roar of anger, he charged toward the nearest support column and began climbing. His movements were powerful, but clumsy. Bruisers weren't natural climbers, and his massive frame made him slow and predictable as he ascended. Marcus watched the climb carefully, noting how Thekmar's joints strained under the unusual stress. The bruiser's hands, designed for crushing rather than precise manipulation, had difficulty finding secure grips on the smaller handholds. When Thekmar reached the first platform level, about 5 meters above the arena floor, Marcus was already moving. He crossed to a different section of the maze, using his smaller size to slip through gaps that would have stopped his opponent entirely. "Stand still and fight," Thekmar demanded, trying to follow Marcus across a narrow beam that groaned ominously under his weight. "Fighting smart is fighting," Marcus replied, dropping to a lower platform as Thekmar's pursuit caused the beam to buckle. "Maybe that's something your species never learned." The insult hit home. Thekmar's face darkened with rage, and he abandoned caution entirely. Instead of following Marcus through the maze-like structure, he began attacking it directly. His massive fist slammed into support beams and platform edges, causing several sections to collapse in showers of sparks and twisted metal. The crowd gasped as tons of debris crashed to the arena floor. This was the kind of destructive display they had expected from the beginning, raw, overwhelming force that could reshape the environment through pure violence. But Marcus had anticipated this response. As Thekmar destroyed the maze, Marcus stayed ahead of the collapse, moving to sections that were still stable. Each destroyed platform actually worked in his favor, creating more debris on the arena floor that would slow down any ground-based pursuit. "You cannot run forever," Thekmar roared, pulling down another section of bridge work. "Eventually you will be trapped." "I'm not trapped," Marcus said, positioning himself on one of the few remaining elevated platforms. "I'm exactly where I want to be." He had been leading Thekmar through the destruction systematically, guiding the bruiser to destroy specific sections while preserving others. What remained was a much simpler structure, essentially a single elevated platform about 8 meters above the arena floor, accessible only by one narrow bridge. Thekmar realized his error too late. In his rage-driven destruction, he had eliminated most of his own routes to reach Marcus's position. The remaining approach was a single bridge barely wide enough for his massive frame, with no room to maneuver once he started across. "Clever trap," Thekmar admitted, his breathing now noticeably labored from the exertion of his destructive rampage. "But what do you plan to accomplish?" You still cannot harm me from there. Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he began examining the platform he stood on, running his hands along its edges and support points. To the spectators, it might have looked like nervous fidgeting, but Marcus was checking for something specific: stress fractures and weakness points that could be exploited. His construction work on Mars had involved a lot of demolition as well as building. He had learned to read the structural integrity of various materials, to spot the critical points where applied force could cause catastrophic failure. "I've been watching you fight for the past 10 minutes, Marcus finally said. "You're tired. That rampage took a lot out of you." Thekmar straightened defensively. "Bruisers do not tire easily. Maybe not easily, but you do tire. And you've been breathing hard for the last 3 minutes. How much do you weigh again? 850 kilograms? That's a lot of mass to haul around, especially when you're angry and not thinking about energy conservation." The observation clearly bothered Thekmar, though he tried to hide it. Marcus was right. The bruiser's breathing pattern had changed, and his movements were slightly less precise than they had been at the beginning of the fight. "Even tired, I am far stronger than you could ever be," Thekmar said. "If you come down to face me directly, this fight will end in seconds." "Probably," Marcus agreed. "But I'm not coming down. You're coming up." Thekmar looked at the narrow bridge leading to Marcus's platform. It would support his weight, but just barely, and he would be completely exposed during the crossing. "You hope to attack me while I am vulnerable during the climb?" Something like that. The bruiser studied the situation carefully, his tactical mind working through the possibilities. If he crossed the bridge, Marcus would have several opportunities to attack while he was off balance. But if he didn't cross, the fight would continue indefinitely, and his energy reserves were indeed lower than he liked to admit. "I see the trap you have laid," Thekmar said finally. "But you have also trapped yourself. That platform has no other exits. When I reach you, there will be nowhere to run. That's the idea." Thekmar's expression showed confusion at this response, but he began crossing the bridge anyway. His movements were careful and deliberate, testing each step to ensure the structure could support him. The bridge groaned and flexed under his weight, but held. As Thekmar reached the halfway point, Marcus suddenly dropped to his knees and began working at something on the platform's edge. His hands moved quickly over what appeared to be some kind of release mechanism. "What are you doing?" Thekmar demanded, picking up his pace despite the bridge's protests. "Something humans are really good at," Marcus replied without looking up. "Making desperate plans work." The platform release mechanism was another piece of arena infrastructure designed to allow rapid reconfiguration of fighting surfaces. But Marcus wasn't trying to reconfigure anything. He was trying to partially disable the platform's primary support system. Thekmar reached the platform just as Marcus finished his work. The bruiser's massive frame landed with tremendous force, immediately sending stress fractures through the platform's surface. But the structure held, despite the ominous creaking sound it made. "Now you face me directly," Thekmar said, advancing across the platform with his fists raised. "No more running, no more tricks." "No more tricks," Marcus agreed, backing toward the edge of the platform. "Just physics." Thekmar lunged forward with devastating speed, his massive fist aimed at Marcus's center mass. It was the kind of attack that had ended dozens of previous fights, unstoppable force delivered with precision and power. But Marcus wasn't there when the blow landed. He had dropped flat to the platform's surface, rolling sideways as Thekmar's punch passed through the space where he had been standing. The bruiser's momentum carried him forward, and his full weight came down on the section of platform that Marcus had been sabotaging. The result was exactly what Marcus had calculated. The weakened support system couldn't handle Thekmar's mass combined with the kinetic energy of his attack. The platform didn't just collapse, it folded in half, creating a V-shaped trap that caught the bruiser at his midsection. Thekmar roared in surprise and pain as the platform edges closed on him like a giant metal jaw. His upper body was on one side of the fold, his legs on the other, and the twisted metal held him in a grip that even his tremendous strength couldn't easily break. Marcus had rolled clear of the collapse, ending up hanging from the platform's edge by his fingertips. He could hear the crowd's shocked reaction as they realized what had happened. The human had just trapped a bruiser using the arena's own structure. "Impossible," Thekmar grunted, straining against the metal that pinned him. No species should be able to calculate such precise structural failure. Humans build things, Marcus said, pulling himself back up to what remained of the platform. When you build things long enough, you learn how they break. The trapped bruiser continued struggling, his powerful muscles bulging as he tried to force the platform pieces apart. Metal groaned and bent under the strain, but the configuration of the collapse meant that his own body weight was working against him. The more he struggled, the tighter the trap became. "You are still too weak to finish me," Thekmar pointed out, though his voice showed strain from the effort of trying to escape. "And I will eventually break free of this." Marcus nodded. "Probably. But you'll be exhausted when you do, and I'll still have the high ground advantage." He gestured around the arena, where several other elevated platforms remained intact. The maze was mostly destroyed, but enough structure remained to give him mobility options that Thekmar wouldn't have. "This is not how combat should be decided," Thekmar protested. "Victory should go to the strongest, the most skilled warrior." "Maybe in your culture," Marcus said. "In mine, victory goes to whoever solves the problem best." The crowd's noise had reached a crescendo as spectators realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. In over 800 previous tournaments, no fighter had ever used the arena's own infrastructure as a primary weapon. Most species had never even considered the possibility. In the VIP section, Director Calovan was having an animated discussion with other hegemony officials. Their skin colors shifted rapidly through patterns of excitement, confusion, and what might have been approval. "The human has demonstrated remarkable tactical innovation," the arena analyst announced. "While lacking the physical capabilities traditionally associated with combat excellence, he has successfully neutralized his opponent through environmental manipulation and what appears to be advanced understanding of structural engineering." Thekmar had stopped struggling and was now breathing heavily, his energy reserves finally approaching their limits. "I acknowledge your cleverness, human, but this cannot continue indefinitely. What is your proposal for ending this combat?" It was the first time in the fight that the bruiser had spoken to Marcus with anything approaching respect rather than dismissal. "That depends," Marcus replied. "Are you ready to submit?" "Bruisers do not submit easily." "Then we keep going until you are." Marcus began moving across the remaining platforms, demonstrating that he still had freedom of movement while Thekmar remained trapped. The psychological impact was clear. The human now controlled the pace in terms of the fight. For the first time since humanity had entered the galactic community, a human fighter was winning. #Galactic crowds mocked every human fighter. Part for the arena had fallen into an unusual quiet. While Thekmar remained trapped in the folded platform, struggling intermittently against the twisted metal, Marcus moved methodically through the remaining elevated structures. He wasn't gloating or showboating. He was studying the arena, planning his next moves, and ensuring he maintained tactical control of the situation. The crowd watched in fascination as the human demonstrated a completely different approach to combat. Where other species relied on strength, speed, or natural weapons, Marcus used calculation, patience, and an understanding of his environment that no one had expected. "Fascinating behavioral patterns," observed Dr. Yexthal, a prominent xenobiologist who provided commentary for Galactic broadcasts. "The human appears to think several moves ahead, like a chess master rather than a warrior. This is contrary to all established models of combat psychology." In the competitors' viewing area, the other tournament fighters watched with expressions ranging from amazement to concern. Many of them were reassessing their own assumptions about human capabilities. Vextar, the Kronar warrior who had spoken with Marcus before the fight, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "I may have underestimated the human concept of adaptation," he said to the fighter beside him, a crystalline zealoth. "This is not mere survival instinct. This is systematic problem-solving applied to combat." The zealoth's response was a harmonic chime that indicated agreement tinged with worry. If one human can neutralize superior physical strength through environmental manipulation, what might their species accomplish with proper preparation and training? Back in the arena, Thekmar had managed to shift his position slightly, but he was still firmly trapped. The effort had cost him considerable energy, and his breathing was now labored enough to be audible throughout the arena. "Human," Thekmar called out, his voice carrying a tone Marcus hadn't heard before, something between respect and genuine curiosity. "I would speak with you." Marcus moved to a platform where he could see his opponent clearly while remaining at a safe distance. "I'm listening. In 47 previous combats, I have never encountered tactics like yours. My species values directness, the honest test of strength against strength. But what you have done..." Thekmar paused, searching for words. "It is not dishonorable, though it is completely alien to my understanding." The admission sent a ripple of conversation through the crowd. Bruisers were known for their pride and their rigid concepts of proper combat. For Thekmar to acknowledge the validity of Marcus's approach was unprecedented. "Your species survived by being clever instead of strong," Thekmar continued. "This suggests your entire evolutionary path was different from most combat-capable species. Tell me, do all humans think like you?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "Not exactly like me, but we all grew up on a planet where we weren't the strongest, fastest, or most dangerous things around. We learned to survive by outthinking our problems instead of overpowering them. And this thinking, it can be taught, improved through training." The question surprised Marcus. "Yes, absolutely. Why?" Thekmar was quiet for a moment, still working to free himself, but with less urgency than before. "Because if it can be taught, then your species is far more dangerous than anyone in the galactic community realizes. What you have done today is not the exception, it is the beginning." The implications of this observation weren't lost on the crowd or the officials. If humans could systematically develop and teach environmental combat techniques, they could potentially compete with any species regardless of physical disadvantages. Director Calovan had left her VIP seat and was now speaking directly with tournament officials through a private communication channel. Her skin patterns showed deep purple streaked with gold, colors indicating urgent strategic consideration. "The human has effectively demonstrated a new paradigm of combat," she was saying to the Hegemony Council members. "This is not merely unusual tactics. This represents a fundamental challenge to our understanding of what constitutes combat effectiveness." Meanwhile, Marcus had begun implementing the next phase of his strategy. Rather than simply maintaining his position, he started systematically dismantling other sections of the remaining arena structure. Not to cause collapses like before, but to create specific tools and environmental modifications. He pried loose a section of metal railing about 2 meters long, not heavy enough to seriously injure Thekmar, but useful as a lever or prodding implement. From another platform, he retrieved some cabling that had been exposed during the earlier destruction. "What are you doing now?" Thekmar asked, watching Marcus's activities with professional interest despite his predicament. "Making sure I can end this fight on my terms," Marcus replied, coiling the cable efficiently. "You're strong enough that you'll probably break free eventually. When you do, I want to be ready. And if I promise to submit rather than continue fighting?" Marcus paused in his preparations. It was a tempting offer, an easy victory that would make history as humanity's first win in the combat rings. But something in Thekmar's tone suggested the offer wasn't entirely straightforward. "Are you actually offering to submit?" Marcus asked. "I am considering it, but I would want to understand your full capabilities before making that decision. Show me what you plan to do with those improvised tools." Marcus studied his opponent carefully. Thekmar was still trapped, still at a disadvantage, but his breathing had stabilized somewhat. The bruiser was recovering his strength, and his questions seemed designed to gather intelligence about human tactics. "Nice try," Marcus said with a slight smile. "But I don't think you're ready to give up just yet. And I'm not about to give away my advantages by explaining my strategy." Thekmar's expression showed what might have been approval. "Wise. I am indeed not prepared to submit. But I am curious to see how you plan to defeat me when I do break free from this trap. Then let's find out." Marcus moved to a position directly above where Thekmar was trapped. From his vantage point, he could see exactly how the bruiser was positioned within the folded platform. And, more importantly, he could see the weak points in the metal that were preventing Thekmar's escape. Using the metal rod he had salvaged, Marcus began systematically tapping on specific sections of the trap. Each tap produced a different tone, allowing him to map the stress distribution and identify the critical failure points. "You are analyzing the structure that holds me," Thekmar observed. "But Why would you want to free me? Because, Marcus said, moving to a new position, I don't want to win by keeping you trapped indefinitely. That's not really defeating you. It's just postponing the real fight. This statement caused a stir among the crowd. Most species would have been content to maintain any advantage that led to victory. The humans' apparent willingness to give up a winning position seemed either admirable or foolish, depending on cultural perspective. Explain your reasoning, Thekmar demanded. Why risk losing when you have already achieved victory? Marcus paused in his analysis of the trap structure. Because if I win this way, everyone will say it was just a fluke. The humans got lucky one time, but couldn't do it again. But if I can beat you in a straight fight after freeing you from the trap, that sends a different message. It sends a message that you are insane, Thekmar pointed out. I'm still much stronger than you, even tired. In direct combat, I will crush you. Maybe, but I don't think so. See, while you've been trapped there, I've been watching how you move, how you react, where your limitations are. And I figured out something important. Marcus began working with a metal rod and cable, fashioning what looked like a simple mechanical device. Bruisers are incredibly strong, but your strength comes with predictable patterns. Your attacks are powerful but linear. Your body structure gives you massive advantages in some situations, but creates vulnerabilities in others. All species have limitations, Thekmar said dismissively. That does not mean you can exploit them. We'll see. Marcus finished his construction, a combination lever and snare device that could be deployed quickly. It wasn't a weapon designed to cause damage, but rather a tool for controlling movement and leverage. Last chance to submit, Marcus offered. Once I free you, the fight gets a lot more dangerous for both of us. Thekmar's response was a renewed effort to break free from the trap, his muscles bulging with exertion as he strained against the twisted metal. Bruisers do not surrender to physically inferior opponents. Free me and face me honorably. All right then. Marcus positioned himself carefully, then used his improvised lever to trigger the release of specific stress points in the folded platform. The metal trap didn't simply open. It collapsed in a controlled fashion that deposited Thekmar on a lower platform, while keeping Marcus at an elevated position with multiple escape routes. The bruiser landed heavily, but managed to keep his feet. He immediately looked around to assess his new tactical situation, then looked up at Marcus with something approaching admiration. Clever again. You freed me, but maintained your advantages. Thek_Skormar stretched, working out the stiffness from his period of confinement. But now I am mobile again and angry about the indignity of being trapped. Anger makes you sloppy, Marcus observed. I've been watching you fight for months in the recordings. When you get emotional, your technique suffers. Then, I shall have to control my emotions. Thekmar's voice carried a new tone, respect for an opponent who had proven more formidable than expected. But understand this, human. Now that I know what you are capable of, I will not be trapped again. I'm counting on it. Marcus began moving through the remaining structure with fluid grace, no longer trying to avoid confrontation, but instead positioning himself for a specific type of engagement. His plan required Thekmar to be mobile and aggressive. The trap had only been the first phase of his overall strategy. The real fight was about to begin, and both combatants knew it. But now the terms were different. Marcus had proven that humans could think their way to victory, and Thekmar had learned that physical superiority wasn't always enough. The crowd sensed the shift in dynamics and began cheering with renewed excitement. They were about to witness something unprecedented. A human fighter who wasn't just surviving, but actively seeking to prove human combat doctrine against one of the galaxy's premier warrior species. #Galactic crowds mocked every human fighter. Part 5 the arena had transformed from a simple fighting ground into something resembling an industrial complex crossed with an obstacle course. Twisted metal, broken platforms, and scattered debris created a three-dimensional battlefield where traditional combat assumptions no longer applied. In this chaotic environment, Marcus moved with the fluid confidence of someone who had found his element. Thekmar, now free from his metal prison, had regained his mobility, but lost his early confidence. The bruiser's movements were more cautious now, his eyes constantly tracking Marcus's position while also watching for potential environmental traps. The casual dismissal he had shown at the beginning of the fight had been replaced by the focused attention of a warrior who recognized a legitimate threat. "Your species is full of surprises," Thekmar called out as he began climbing toward Marcus's position. His ascent was more careful this time, testing each handhold and avoiding the structural weak points that Marcus had exploited earlier. "But surprises alone will not be enough in direct combat." "Good thing I have more than surprises," Marcus replied, moving to a platform that put a gap of about 3 meters between them, close enough for conversation, far enough to avoid Thekmar's devastating reach. The crowd had grown quieter, sensing that the fight was entering its final phase. In a VIP section, Director Calovan was recording detailed observations, her skin patterns cycling through colors that indicated deep analytical focus. This combat was providing data that would reshape galactic understanding of human capabilities. "Director," one of her assistants said through a private communication channel, "the betting pools are in chaos. No one anticipated this duration or complexity. Should we consider intervention?" "Absolutely not," Calovan replied without taking her attention from the arena. "This is exactly what the combat rings are meant to demonstrate. The full range of species capabilities under pressure. Let it conclude naturally." Marcus had been studying Thekmar's movement patterns throughout the fight, and now he was ready to test his theories about bruiser limitations. Instead of maintaining distance, he suddenly jumped to a platform that brought him within Thekmar's striking range. The bruiser reacted instantly, his massive fist lashing out with the speed and force that had devastated dozens of previous opponents. But Marcus had expected this exact attack. He dropped into a crouch that let the punch pass overhead, then sprang forward to grab Thekmar's extended arm with both hands. What followed defied every spectator's expectations. Instead of trying to overpower Thekmar or damage his arm, Marcus used the bruiser's own momentum and leverage principles to redirect the force of the attack. Thekmar found himself pulled off balance as his tremendous punch was turned into a rotation that sent him stumbling toward the edge of the platform. "Impossible," Thekmar grunted, windmilling his arms to regain balance. "You cannot redirect my strength. You are too small." "Size doesn't matter if you understand the physics," Marcus replied, already moving to position himself for the next exchange. "Your strength works against you when it's misdirected." Thekmar regained his footing and turned to face Marcus with new respect and wariness. "You study combat like an engineer studies machines. Because that's essentially what it is. Bodies are biological machines with specific capabilities and limitations. Understanding the machine means understanding how to defeat it." The philosophical difference between their approaches was now clear to everyone watching. Thekmar fought with the direct application of overwhelming force, the way his species had always fought. Marcus fought with systematic analysis and exploitation of mechanical principles, the way humans had learned to survive. "Then, let me show you the limits of your analysis," Thekmar growled, launching into a series of coordinated attacks that showcased the full range of bruiser combat techniques. His first strike was a feint, a punch aimed at Marcus's center mass, but intended to force a defensive movement that would set up the real attack. When Marcus dodged left as expected, Thekmar's second fist was already coming around in a devastating hook that should have connected with crushing force. But Marcus hadn't just dodged, he had calculated the sequence. As the hook came toward him, he dropped flat to the platform's surface and swept his leg across Thekmar's ankles. The bruiser's tremendous momentum worked against him, and he crashed to the platform with enough force to crack the metal surface. Before Thekmar could recover, Marcus was on him. But instead of trying to deliver damage through strikes, he used his knowledge of joint mechanics and leverage to apply what human martial artists called a submission hold, a technique that used Thekmar's own body structure to limit his movement. What are you doing?" Thekmar demanded, finding his left arm twisted behind his back in a position that caused significant discomfort despite his thick hide and dense muscle structure. Demonstrating the difference between strength and control, Marcus replied, maintaining the hold while staying positioned where Thekmar's other arm couldn't reach him. "You're stronger than me, but strength is useless if you can't apply it effectively." The crowd's reaction was electric. No one had ever seen a smaller species successfully restrain a bruiser through technique alone. The implications were staggering. If such methods could be taught, and refined, physical size would no longer be the determining factor in combat supremacy. Thekmar struggled against the hold, his massive frame writhing with effort. But Marcus had positioned himself perfectly, using leverage and mechanical advantage to maintain control despite the enormous difference in their strength levels. This is not natural combat. Thekmar gasped, his breathing labored from the unusual stress being placed on his joints and muscles. It's human combat, Marcus corrected. We've had to develop techniques that let smaller, weaker individuals defeat larger, stronger opponents. It's how we survived long enough to reach the stars. The bruiser made one more tremendous effort to break free, his muscles bulging with exertion that should have snapped any normal restraint. But Marcus's hold wasn't based on raw strength. It was based on anatomical knowledge and mechanical principles that remained constant regardless of how much force Thekmar could generate. "Do you submit?" Marcus asked, increasing the pressure slightly to demonstrate that he could cause real damage if necessary. For a long moment, the arena was completely silent. Thekmar's breathing was the only sound as he processed the reality of his situation. He was defeated not by superior strength or speed, but by superior understanding, by a species that had learned to turn physics itself into a weapon. Thekmar began, then stopped. The word submit was not one that came easily to a species. "There's no shame in it," Marcus said quietly, speaking directly to Thekmar rather than for the crowd's benefit. "You fought well. You're incredibly strong and skilled. But this time, you ran into something your training didn't prepare you for." Thekmar was quiet for another moment, then let out what might have been a laugh. "Human Marcus Chun of Earth," he said formally, his voice carrying clearly across the arena. "I acknowledge your victory. I submit." The arena erupted. 50,000 beings from dozens of species rose to their feet, creating a cacophony of cheers, roars, clicks, and harmonics that shook the very structure of the station. For the first time in galactic history, a human had won in the combat rings. Marcus released the hold and stepped back, offering Thekmar a hand up. The bruiser accepted the assistance, rising to his full height and looking down at the human who had just defeated him. "That was educational," Thekmar said, flexing his arm to work out the stiffness. "Your species has much to teach the galaxy about the nature of combat." The official referee approached, its strange voice resonating through the arena noise. "Victory to human Marcus Chun of Earth. Advancement to second round confirmed." In the crowd, the small group of human diplomats were crying with joy and relief. 6 months of defeats had made them wonder if humanity would ever prove itself capable in galactic competition. Now, they had their answer. Director Caloven made her way down to the arena floor, her skin showing patterns of excitement and curiosity. "Human Chun," she said formally, "that was a remarkable display of, what would you call it? Technical combat." "Just human fighting," Marcus replied, still breathing hard from the exertion. "We've had a lot of practice dealing with things bigger and stronger than us." "Indeed. I think the galactic community will need to revise many of its assumptions about your species." As Marcus left the arena, he could hear the crowd continuing to discuss what they had witnessed. Conversations in dozens of languages all centered on the same theme. Humans were far more dangerous than anyone had realized, not despite their physical limitations, but because of them. In the competitors' area, the other tournament fighters watched Marcus pass with new expressions. The casual dismissal was gone, replaced by analytical attention and, in some cases, genuine concern. If one human could defeat a bruiser through pure technique, what might a fully trained human combat specialist be capable of? Vextar approached Marcus as he reached the preparation chambers. "That was impressive, human. But you understand that your next opponent will not underestimate you, as Thekmar did." "I'm counting on it," Marcus replied with a tired smile. Underestimation was never really an advantage anyway. Now I get to see how human techniques work against opponents who are actually trying their hardest to beat me. The Kronar warrior's mandibles clicked with what Marcus now recognized as respect. "Your species is going to change everything, aren't you?" Marcus looked back toward the arena, where maintenance crews were beginning to clean up the destruction and prepare for the next fight. The crowd was still talking excitedly, their voices carrying the energy of beings who had witnessed something unprecedented. "We're going to try," he said finally. Humans are good at adaptation, and the galaxy just gave us a lot of new things to adapt to. As news of humanity's first victory spread across the galactic communication networks, a new understanding began to emerge. Physical strength and natural weapons were not the only paths to combat supremacy. Intelligence, adaptability, and systematic thinking could be just as effective and potentially far more dangerous. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. And Marcus Chund, construction worker from Mars, had just become the first human to prove that his species belonged among the stars not as subjects or supplicants, but as equals who had simply found their own way to fight. The tournament continued, but something fundamental had changed. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy in terms that every species could understand. There were survivors, fighters, and problem solvers who would not be dismissed or underestimated again. The real test would come in the following rounds, when Marcus faced opponents who understood exactly what they were dealing with. But for now, it was enough that humanity had proven one critical point. Size and strength were not the only measures of a warrior. Sometimes the smallest fighter could teach the galaxy the largest lessons about what it truly meant to never give up.